All right, let's continue with the second part of the lecture here. As I ended the previous one, trying very hard not to cough. I don't know if you noticed that. But as I finished the second one, we got to this slide here. And while before we talked about verbs that must be followed by infinitives and not gerunds, now we're going to talk about some verbs that can be followed by either an infinitive or a gerund. Both are possible. So the first list we have here are the verbs that can be followed by infinitives or gerunds, and there is no change in the meaning. It's completely your choice which one you want to do. There's not that many words, or there are more than what I have up here, but actually these are the most common ones, and unfortunately it's not a really long list. Here's an example here with the verb like. I like to play volleyball. There's our infinitive. I like playing volleyball. There's our gerund. Both sentences have identical meanings. There's no change in the meaning. Completely your choice to use whichever one you like. Same with love, can't stand, and so on. Begin and start as well. It began to rain. It began raining. The infinitive, the gerund, is completely your choice of which one you want to use. So these verbs are very nice in that way. There is one exception I need to mention for begin and start. There's one particular case where you cannot use the gerund with those, and here's that rule. Begin and start in the progressive tenses are followed by infinitives. So what did we just say there? If you use begin or start in a progressive tense, present progressive, past progressive would be the main examples of that. We need to have the infinitive next. Here's our example here. It was just beginning to rain. There is our past progressive, the past continuous, and we want to follow it up with the infinitive. This is the special case where only the infinitive will be okay. If you take a look at the other example, maybe you can get a sense of why we prefer the infinitive in this case and not the gerund. It was just beginning raining. That sounds really awkward to us, to the native speakers. You got one ing here, another ing here. They just don't really seem to match very well. So again, generally speaking, begin and start can be followed by infinitive or gerund if in most of the tenses. Simple present, simple past, the present perfect, and so on. But only in the progressive tenses are we limited to using the infinitive with these particular verbs. So something to keep in mind. Very well may come up on the test. Want to make sure you got that one. Now the next list that we'll look at are some special verbs that can be followed by infinitives or gerunds, but which one you use makes a difference in the meaning. So let's take a look at those. Here are the ones that we're going to be talking about. Remember, forget, regret, try, and stop. Let's start with remember and forget. Now here I have a case of remember being followed by the infinitive. Here I have remember being followed by the gerund. And maybe when you read these sentences you can see that there's a different meaning going on here. Something different is going on between these two. The first one, I need to remember to lock the door. I need to remember to lock the door. The second one, I remember locking the door. I remember locking the door. If you take a look at these two sentences, think about what they're trying to say, and maybe you can already come up with an idea of how these are used differently. Well, let's go ahead and look at the rules for those. Again, this is for remember and forget. If you use remember and forget with the infinitive, it means you remember or forget to perform a task or a duty. That's what that means. So it's something you are supposed to do, something you are entrusted to do. And do you remember to do it, or did you forget to do it? Look at the examples again. Please remember to lock the door. I'm giving you this task, this responsibility, this duty. You need to remember to do that, right? Before you leave the building, remember to lock the door. Forgot. I forgot to do the homework. You were supposed to do the homework. That was the task that the teacher gave you, and you forgot to do that task. Okay, so that's what it is with the infinitive. If you use remember or forget with the gerund, the ing gerund, that means you remember or forget something that already happened. You are having a memory of something that happened in the past. Look at the examples. I remember meeting her in the summer on a Saturday. This person has that memory, has the memory of the day. In the summer on that Saturday, he remembers the day of meeting her. I have that memory. I remember meeting her. I will never forget seeing the Alps for the first time, that mountain range, primarily in Switzerland. I will never forget seeing the Alps for the first time. This memory, the memory of seeing the Alps, I will never forget that. So that's with the gerund. You can see it's quite a different meaning depending on which you use, the infinitive or the gerund. Moving along. Regret, the next one we'll take a look at. If you use regret with the infinitive, this is what it means. You regret to say, you're sorry to say, or inform someone about something. It's a very specific case, actually. Look at the examples. I regret to tell you that you didn't pass. This is some bad news coming from the teacher. I'm sorry to tell you. I regret to tell you you didn't pass the class. You need to come back, take the class again. I regret to inform you that your flight has been canceled. In an airport, you might hear this bad news. And of course, it is always bad news if you use the word regret. I regret to inform you. So this is a very specific case here. You have to have some infinitive form like tell, inform, say, state. That's pretty much it. You're sorry to give this certain information. Okay, so that is the very specific meaning of using regret with the infinitive. For the more general meaning, the more common meaning, we use that with the gerund. And that is the usual meaning. Regret something that happened in the past. Look at the examples. I regret loaning him the money. I regret doing this. I regret this action. Maybe they loaned the money, he didn't pay the money back. Big mistake. I regret loaning him the money. I regret booking a flight with this airline. This airline had canceled my flight. They always cancel my flights. Why did I do that? I regret booking the airline, a flight with that airline. So that's the difference between regret with infinitive and with a gerund. Let's go on to try. Now I have two scenarios here. If you read each one, you can get an idea of how these are different. It was really hot in class yesterday. I tried to open the window, but it was stuck. But I tried. I made the attempt. I tried to open the window, but it was stuck. Couldn't do it. Next scenario, very similar context. It was really hot in class yesterday. I tried opening the window, but the room was still too hot. I tried opening the window. I did it. I tried it. But the room was still too hot. Which scenario did the person not open the window? That's the first one. I tried to, it was stuck. I couldn't do it. I attempted it, but it was stuck. In this scenario, the second one, the person actually opened the window, but it didn't help. The room was still too hot. So maybe you already got a little sense of how these two are different. If you use try with the infinitive, it simply means you make an effort. Maybe you were successful, maybe you failed. I tried to call you, but you didn't answer. I attempted to. I tried to call you. I tried to open the window, but it was stuck. In these cases, in both of these cases, they're making an effort. Here I have a little bit negative. I tried but failed. But it can be positive, of course. You are trying to get an A in the class, and maybe you'll get it. Right? You're making that effort. Now, if you use try with a gerund, that has a bit of a different meaning. Try with a gerund means try some action, try something, and see if it works. See if it is successful. Or try something and see if you like it. See if it's good or see if it's bad. In a way, it's kind of testing something. You're kind of doing an experiment in a way to see if something will work, if it's a good solution, or to see if it's something interesting. And look at the examples again. I tried opening the window, but the room was still too hot. I tried it. I opened the window, but this experiment to cool down the room was not successful. It was still too hot. Someday I'd like to try hiking the Narrows. I'd like to try this activity. Not really attempt, but just experience it and test it to see, is it fun or is it not fun? Right? You might say, someday I'd like to try skydiving. Someday I'd like to try bungee jumping. Just see if I like it, see how it is. All right, so that's try. And finally, we have stop. If you look at these two sentences, you'll probably get an idea quite quickly of how they're different. We stopped talking so we could listen to the radio. We were talking about the weather and then stopped to listen to the radio. Now, actually, in both sentences, I've said pretty much the same information. But take a look at the first one. What did I actually stop doing? Talking. I stopped talking. Why? So I could listen to the radio, so we could listen to the radio. Second one, what did you actually stop in the second one? You didn't stop listening. You stopped talking. Why did you stop talking? Because you want to listen. In order to listen, I stopped talking. So you can see with the infinitive, it means you stop a different activity in order to do this activity. And that's what I have here. Stop with the gerund means you stopped that activity. We stopped talking so we could listen to the radio. With the infinitive, it's stop in order to do something. She saw her professor in the hall and stopped to talk to him. Why did she stop? She wanted to talk to him. We can just imagine that she stopped walking. She stopped going to her class in order to talk to her professor. And then, of course, we have this example we've had from before. Now, we don't have time to cover this, but in exercise 30, get some really good practice with that. Highly recommend doing that on page 318. Now, we've got one last thing to quickly go through. Gerunds and infinitives as subjects. Now, I already mentioned this in a previous video. You can have a gerund phrase as your subject. Learning second languages is difficult. That is exactly your subject. That's why I have singular grammar here. Learning is difficult. Doesn't matter about the rest of the phrase, by the way. Just because I have the plural here is not going to change the verb here, because this is actually the head of that phrase, the subject. Now, if you want to do that with the infinitives, you can. To learn a second language is difficult. This is okay. We can do this. However, that's a little more common to use for the infinitive form. It is difficult to learn a second language. Now, what is the it? It's to learn. This is actually still my subject. I just changed the structure a little bit, and this is quite common. It's difficult to learn. It's easy to learn. This style is a little more common than this style. And then finally, you can also add a little more specific information. It's difficult for me to learn. Maybe for you it's okay, but for me it's difficult. So again, you can add this for a little bit more specific information. Exercise 37, exercise 39 are good practices for this to make sure you get this gerunds and infinitives of subjects down. That's page 322, page 323. So review those, and you should be okay along with the workbook for the test next week. All right, that'll do it for today.